All right, good morning. We're gonna start up. I'll remind you of this, of course, again, but again, 1 week from today, there are no classes. All right, because it is Martin Luther King Day, so the school celebrates that, is an official school holiday, so school won't be open, to my knowledge. You're not really supposed to ever come in here if there is not one of the security people outside, taking your temperature and the like. So that goes for me too, because I wanted to come in here during the break, and I was kind of told that you really shouldn't do that. All right, this morning I sent you 2 emails, and we're going to go over those. The first part of these, the first stuff that's in here, these first 4 URLs that are shown here, they're more for the benefit of the people who have just started. All right, we did talk about going out to GitHub and getting an account. You may or may not have done this. GitHub, again, for lack of better words, just keeping it simple, is a software versioning system. What it does is it allows you to save whatever you need to save out into the cloud and get it on an as-needed basis, and you can share it with other people if that's what you want to do. You really won't do much of that in here other than sharing it with me, and you can access it from different machines. All right, so for instance, we don't use the machines that are here. They're here for the hardware program. But if you were using these machines and then you wanted to go home and work on it at home, for example, you could do that. Now, GitHub allows you to make these software repositories. You use GitHub with other software. When I taught this class a year ago, or 2 years ago, the software that we used for this was something called Bitbucket. And the reason that we use Bitbucket is it allowed you to create things for free, and you could make them public or you could make them private, okay? At the time, when you worked with Git, which is what we're going to talk about in a minute, Git did not allow you to make anything private. Everything you made was public. However, about a year ago, Microsoft bought Git, and they have since allowed you to make repositories for free and be able to use Git. So you use Git and GitHub together. The reason I'm telling you that is, again, if you have not already done so if you don't have Git on your machine, if you're a new person, or if you got a different machine or whatever, I'd like you to go out to here. You shouldn't need the HTTP:, but you can put it in. It's not going to hurt anything. And I'm going to run through this with you. Why? Because I don't have it on this machine. So I'm going to go out to git/scm.com. SCM stands for Source Control Manager, or management. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. All right, so I'm going to go out there right now. And when you do, it should look something like this. Now, yours will look a little different probably because it'll probably say for Mac. I think it recognizes the type of machine you have. And if it doesn't, there is a thing in here under downloads for Mac. All right. You now notice that 2.30.0 is the most up to date. Probably you guys who were here last semester don't have anything that high. Yours might be 225, 227. It shouldn't matter at all. All right, just so you know. But it's pretty simple. Before we do the download, if you look right here, they have kind of the ultimate authority for this. This is an online book. I'm not going to even click the link, but if you click it, you can read anything you want to read about Git. All right, it's totally free. You can print it. You can do whatever you'd like to do with it, or never use it. It doesn't really matter. But I'm going to click the button that's here on the computer that says download 2.30.0 for Windows, and I'd like you to do the same. And again, as always, it comes down to the bottom here because I'm using Chrome, and it tells me that it's doing this. All right. And then I right mouse click on there and I'm going to choose open. Typically, most machines do this that says, hey, you've got to be an administrator. You should be administrator if it's your machine, of course. So you just click yes. All right. This has got the licensing agreement that's in here. All right. You can read that if you care to. This says where do you want it to be installed. I just take the default, which is under Program Files Git. Notice it says 258.9 meg of free disk space is required. you are going to be using Git all 4 semesters that you are here. All right, so I'm going to click next again. Now, there's a lot of different stuff that's in here. So notice additional icons. Do you want an icon on your desktop, etc.? What most people end up doing is just accepting the default right here. And that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to click next. All right. And it says it will create the program shortcuts. And it'll, it says to continue if you want a different folder other than Git. No, that's fine. All right. So I'm going to click next again. All right. Now, the thing that's on here, just so you know this, technically, this really doesn't matter. All right. What you choose here. But what a lot of people like to do is they like to click the down arrow here and choose like Notepad++, or what you guys are going to end up using next semester a lot is going to be Visual Studio Code. You might want to choose that one. And again, it's available both for Windows and for the Mac. All right. Visual Studio Code is a terrific editor. It's kind of a scaled down version of Visual Studio that we're using right now. Okay, the only problem that I have with it is it doesn't work well with the software I have on my machine that allows me to record these lectures. So a lot of times what I end up doing is I end up using Notepad++, which is kind of an upscale version of Notepad. So that's the one I'm choosing. Even if you choose nothing here or just choose the default, which is Vim, it doesn't matter. All right, but I'm just going to I'm going to choose Notepad++ anyway and click next. All right. Then it says, let Git decide or override the default branch name for new repositories. Again, I'm just going to take the default and click next. On here, do you want to run Git from the command line? I'm just going to leave it where it is and click next again. And it says, do you want to use the OpenSSL library? I'm again going to click OK. Check out Windows style. Again, I'm going to click next and use this. Some of these are legacy settings that you really don't have to worry about. I'm going to click next again. And the default, I'm going to click next again. And Git Credential Manager Core, I'm going to click next again. Enable file system caching, I'm going to click next again. And the enabled experimental support, well, I don't want them to necessarily be able to do anything with my machine, so I'm just going to click install. Literally, it takes about 30 seconds to a minute, and then you'll have it available. And I'm going to show you immediately how you can tell whether or not it's been installed on your machine immediately. All right. That was it. Now, you probably don't want to launch it. Typically, people don't want to review the release notes on here either, so I'm going to uncheck both these, and I'm going to click Finish. Now, to be able to tell whether or not this worked, the easiest way, just go onto your desktop, as I am right here, right mouse click, and see if it says Git GUI here and Git Bash here. So if you did that and you have any problems, please raise your hand. All right, otherwise I'm going to assume that it's okay. What we're going to do as we start out today is we're going to build 3 dummy projects, and I'm going to show you 3 different ways that you can use Git and GitHub with these. All right, and it's going to go from doing it the hard way, which is kind of the way you guys did it last semester, to doing it the easy way, which wasn't available in Visual Studio Code, but is available in Visual Studio. So we're going to look at that. Now, am I right in assuming that you 3, you all did the install and you had no problems, correct?
Should we only have Git Bash on the desktop?
You should have Git Bash or Git GUI. The only one we're going to use is Git Bash. So if you've got Git Bash, you're okay. I don't ever use Git GUI. Git Bash does it from the command line, but there's very few commands you have to use. All right? Okay, so if you've got all that stuff, great. All right, then I'm going to jump back into here. So again, this was the GitHub homepage. If you have not yet installed GitHub on your machine or set up a GitHub account, you should do that right now. And it doesn't matter, again, if you do that through Mac or you do that through Windows. All right. But again, I've already got a GitHub account, but if you go out to github.com, okay, you're going to find this. So mine, I think when it comes up, let's see, where are we here? So if I come out here and I go to github.com, All right, this is what yours should look like. And once you've got an account, it should immediately recognize you and allow you to sign in. I'm going to try to sign up again. I don't know if I have one I've got a Charter account, but I'm going to try to do a sign up on there anyway. So my username, it's my Charter account is just jpscott@charter.com or charter.net, I guess it is. All right. I don't know what my password is here, which is one of the reasons I'm doing this. And let's see. It's pretty simple. So send me, I don't really want those. Please solve this puzzle so we can know that you're a real person. How many? Pick the dice pair adding up to 7. No, 4 and 3. Next time, pick the dice pair adding up to 7. Okay, try it again. Oh, I thought that said 3. 6 and 1, right? I would think. That's 5. That's 5. Geez. 6. Pick the dice pair adding up to 7. 6 and 2, 5 and 3, 5 and 1. There, that one. I did it. Whoops, that's not quite it. Great. 3 and 3, 5 and 4. Isn't that it right here? I would think so. 6 and 1, right? Okay. 4, 4, 1, 5, and 2. 2 are done. All right, do it again. 5 and 2. Wow. Create account. Hopefully. This should Username may contain only alphanumeric characters or single hyphens and cannot begin or end with a hyphen. All right, I'm just going to put JP Scott, Rankin, Technical College. There, I put that in. All right, so I've got a password. Says that's available. Email address. I'm going to put in here my Charter one. I think it only allows you to put in one address. Oh, it looks like I've already got that. Oh, great. Okay. Jeff Scott RTC @gmail.com. Email is invalid or it's already taken. Oh, this is fantastic. Cripes. I think I could even put in a garbage one here, so I'm going to put in my wife's. All right, create account. All right, it comes back up and it asks you, it looks like this, I don't know, teacher. Well, if you were a student, you'd probably click that one. I'm going to click teacher. How much programming experience you have? I'm just going to put you, if you've got none, just put down whatever. What do you plan to use GitHub for? I'm going to learn Git and GitHub, that's fine. And complete the setup. All right, so you should get this verification email then. All right, once you click it, you should be fine. Please do the best you can to remember what you used in there for your account name and also what you used for your password. All right. Okay. So that's that one. Now, I'm not going to go and open up either one of these, but last semester I had the people in this class, we watched these two things, and they are collectively about 40 minutes long. All right, the first one, they're both by Colt Steele. He's a guy who does a lot of online teaching. I've taken classes through him. He knows what he's doing. All right, the first one, as it says, is learn GitHub in 20 minutes. The second one is learn Git in 15 minutes. He goes through some of the same stuff I've just done, all right? But he also goes through what you have to basically do to get started on here. I'm not going to talk about it anymore other than that. All right. There's also in here, and we're going to go over these in just a minute, but as it says in here, this Git experience, there's, as I mentioned, there are basically 3 different ways, and probably more than that, that you can set this stuff up when you are working in Visual Studio. All right. Now, I'm actually going to change this from what I told you before, in that, why don't you just watch, okay? And then let's do the last way as a class, because that's probably the way you're going to use, okay? So you can come in here. So I can come in here and I can start up Visual Studio. All right, and I'm just going to come in here and say, create a new project. All right, so I can, I'm just going to grab quickly a console C#1, and I'm going to click next, and we'll just call this Git example 01. All right, and I'm going to click create. Again, you don't have to do this. So it's created this. Now what I can do if I want to, I got to find it first. There it is I can go to this file right here. This is kind of the way we all did this last semester. All you guys are used to doing it, okay? So we can go in here, we can right mouse click on here, we can choose Git Bash. Now, yours won't work if you try doing this because there's a couple Git commands you have to put in when you first start. In fact, I probably don't have those in here. So I'll show you what those are. You can put these in as well. It's not going to hurt anything one way or the other. I always forget what they are. So there we go. And of course I removed it, and I did a bunch of cleanup on this machine this weekend, so I gotta find this file. Give me just a second. Okay, when you first get started using Git, and you only have to do this once, okay? You all you newbies, so to speak, you can come in here. I'm gonna make this bigger. It's about as big as I can make it, so I realize that's probably gonna be hard to see, but I will show you the command and I will type it. You have to let GitHub know, basically, what your name is and what your email is. Okay, so I'm going to put it in, but then I'm going to very quickly copy this just so you can see it. Okay, I've got it in there. So let me put it up here so you can all see it. So you will type in git config -- global user.name and just put your name in there. Now, your name is not Jeff Scott, so you won't put that in. All right, but put that in and hit enter. If you put that in and hit enter and you just get a prompt back, it worked. If you get some kind of an error message, let me know. This is basically setting up and letting Git know the primary username that's going to be associated with this account. All right. Then we've got to do another one that's very similar to this, so I'm just going to copy this. If you're using DOS, you can basically hit your up arrow key, but don't worry about it. Otherwise, just copy this in or type in this. So email, and then your email address. Again, after you put that in and you hit enter, put in your email address, of course, not mine, and you hit enter, if the prompt comes back, that's all you got to do to get set up. That's literally all you've got to do. Those are minus signs, dashes, hyphens, whatever you want to call them. On my keyboard, it's up near the backspace key. It's 2 to the left of that. Again, you should put your name in here. You should put your email in here. Technically, you can put in anything there because it's supposed to check it, but I don't even think the system does check it. And finally, if you want to double check and make sure you got Git up and running, etc. on your system, you can just type in, you don't have to do this, but you can type in Git minus version and hit enter. And it'll probably come back and say that it's running Git 2.30.0 because that's the one that we just installed on your system. All right. Now, there's different things that you have to do for this, but I'm not going to go through those right now because that's if you're doing it, quote, the hard way, unquote. Okay? Now, what I'm about to show you right now, if you look up on the screen, you don't have to do any of this. I'm showing you this. This would be the hardest way of doing it. All right? So what I'd have to do is, and this is kind of the way that we did it last semester, all right, is we would come in here, we would go into GitHub. All right, so we would go into GitHub. Bad thing right now is it's using the wrong one that I put in here, my wife's email address. So but what I want to show you is we'd come in here, you'd come in and you'd create what's called a new repository. All right, that's what you do. You don't have to do this, but that's what you do. So you'd create a new repository, okay? And it would go through, it's not going to let me because I haven't done that email yet. All right. But you'd come in here and you'd have to give it a name, etc., and it would be all set up. All right. Then we'd come back in here and you'd come in here and you've got our Git example 1, and we'd come into here and we'd right mouse click in here and we would type in git bash here and you'd type in git space init. Now, if you look up on the screen, again, you don't have to do this. Once I hit enter, it's going to put a new folder right here. All right, so I hit enter, and I guess it's not showing me hidden folders. I'll have to change that, but there is a Git folder that's there now, okay? And then I'd have to come through here, and I'd have to say git space add space dot, and that would add everything to that new Git folder. And I'd have to do what's called push, which would push it up to my GitHub account, all right? And then I'd have to go to my GitHub account and make sure it was there. Now, that would work. We could do that. It would work just fine, all right? So that's one way, and that's the hard way. But we could do it, and it would work. I'm just telling you that it would work. So that said, I'm going to show you yet a second way. Why am I doing this? Because I want to show you what Microsoft has done over time to try to make it easier for you to use this. All right. So the second way that we could do it, and we're not going to, I'm going to now just come in here and I'm going to close this solution. And I'm going to create a new project and another one. And I'm just going to call it create new project. There it is. Next. And I'm just going to call this GitHub 02. All right. And again, I'm going to get rid of these anyway, but I just want you to see this. So that's my second one. Now, to do this second one, this is the way you had to do it originally before they made some modifications to Visual Studio. All right. And that's what we'll look at in just a minute. So you came back in here and you went and clicked this button. And if you remember, when we installed Visual Studio, one of the things we had in here was the Visual Studio installer. So you have to click on that installer, and it'll come back up. and it says, this is what you have right now. Okay? And it says it's up to date. Well, it should be because we just did it the other day. But you come in here and you click the modify button, and it says, oh, well, this is the other stuff you can add. Well, we don't want to add any of that, but we want to go over to individual components, and in here we want to type in Git. And you notice there is Git for Windows and there's Git extension for Visual Studio. So you would check both of those and you would click install while downloading. Okay? And then a lot of the stuff basically set up for you would be a lot nicer, but you don't have to do that. All right? So we could do that. It wouldn't hurt anything to do it. All right? But what we should be able to do now, and all of you, I'd like every one of you in this room to try it right now, and that is just go in and start up a brand new console project. It doesn't matter what you call it, and you do not have to save it. So I'm just going to grab this same one that I had up here before. All right, I'll give you a minute to catch back up. If you look up on the screen, might be easier to look on your own machine, but up on your menu up here, the fourth one over now says Git. That is fairly new. So I'm going to click Git, and I'm going to, up there, I'm going to click Create Git Repository. All right. Now, if you get this, that means you're not currently signed into GitHub. If you were signed into GitHub, it might look a lot different than this. But it's asking me right now to sign in. Well, I've got to go back to my other machine, and since I don't remember my password for my JP Scott Rankin, I'm going to have to change the password and then go back and do that. What I am telling you, though, it's not that that shouldn't affect you whatsoever, is you can now go to sign in on yours. All right, and as it says, add an account. You go out to GitHub. All right, and what is it saying here? Visual Studio, authorize GitHub. I'm just running through this. I have not looked at this before. Success, your authorization was successful. I probably shouldn't have done that because it's probably using the old one on here, but that's fine. All right, so now notice it's changed. Mine is changed to JP Scott Rankin Technical College. All right, so now what it's doing, and I want all of you, even you guys from last semester, to listen to this, because where it says this repository name, it's now a local repository. It's not on your GitHub system yet. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's just on your machine. You will still have to push it, but it's not hard to do. All right, so you can, if you want, come in here and put a description in here. Notice here, I want all of you to have yours be checked for private. Because if it's not checked for private, that means that anyone who knows what your GitHub name is can go in and look at your code. Okay? Now, once you graduate from here or whatever, and you want to go back and change that to public, you can do that. That's not a big thing. But we don't allow that because, you know, again, one person could do all the work and everybody else could just, for lack of better words, kind of suck off that person. We don't do that. So you'd leave it private. Now, if I was going to do this, I would uncheck this because when I do things, I share everything with you. All right? But for now, again, I'll just leave it there. So I'm going to say here, create and push right this second. And if I say this, what is it doing? Well, you've got to look down on the bottom here. Well, it should be telling me something, and it's not. But when I look over here, please look up on the screen. Because you didn't see this last semester. None of you did, because we weren't using this software. But it's got Git changes up here. All right? And once we go over to Git changes, and you click on that, what is that? What is this? The heck does this mean? Well, let's say that I come in here and I want to add another line of code. And I type in console. You don't have to do this, but just so you see it. How are you? All right, and I put that in. Now I've got 2 lines of code. So I can come in here if I want to, and I can check and see if I've had changes made. All right, and I can put in a message that just says, you know, added, a new line of code. Fine. And I can go to commit all right here. Okay. So it's saying, do you want to, well, I haven't saved. So yeah, I want to save. All right. And this is basically what we're going to do. Now, that was not at all a great explanation, but I did want you to see that you literally, when you come in here now and you go into Git, you've got a thing in here to create a local repository for you, and you can tell it eventually to push, and it'll push it out to GitHub for you automatically. So there's not going to be any work that you're going to have to do this. Hopefully what I just said at least made a little bit of sense. All right. Now, let's say it didn't make a lot of sense. So I'm just going to assume for a second, yeah, I listened to you, but you know, I don't know what the hell you were really saying. Okay, fine. So in the other stuff that's in here that I sent you, the second way that I showed you, that is actually online if you want to see it, but the last way, the way I want you to use, this is the document that goes along with that. There's literally a document, and I sent that document to you. So you've got this document. It's about 20 pages long. So if you want a lot more than I gave you, or you didn't understand what I said, or you try it and it doesn't work, or whatever, you can go up and take a look at that document. That document also is online, and if you go online, there's a 5.5-minute video where the guy runs through what I just ran through with you, and that's this one. Do you understand now what I'm saying? So you've got that information available to you. The reason that this is important is it used to be that I would give everybody in here, and I know you've got one already, but you did everything on this flash drive. Then I had to worry, did you give me your flash drive? Is everything on there, etc. Now the expectation is you're going to push everything that you do out to GitHub. All right, and that will then, you know, I will be able to go out and grade it then. Does that all make sense to everybody in here? Questions? All right. Now, I do have a thing for you. No, I've not given it to any of you yet, but I've got a thing in here that's called AWD1. Oh, it should be 1100, but it's somehow I put 11. There we go. All right, so, yeah, okay. But you're going to have this tomorrow. I'm going to show you what's in it. I'm going to tell you why you don't have it right now. All right. Mr. Smith, who teaches second-year classes and occasionally first-year classes, created a bunch of really nice handouts, and they're in here. I'm not going to go through those handouts. I'm not going to assign those handouts, but there's some good information on there, and I will show you that information, all right, at certain times during the semester. All right. Then there's a folder in here called homework. And that file is going to have in there, it's going to have a Word file and a PDF that's going to have your homework assignments. All right. We're going to look at this one in just a moment. All right. Then there's another folder called labs. Mr. Smith has created labs for most of the chapters that we're going to be going over in this book. You will get those as well. All right. Then there is a folder called slides. It's got all of the PowerPoint slides for the entire book. I'm not going to go over a lick of those, but sometimes people like to have the slides, you know, to take a look at because they're supposed to be kind of a summary of what each chapter is about. So you have those. Finally, you'll have a thing in here. If you go out to Muroc.com, you don't have to. But if you go out to Muroc.com, this is the student download. And under where it says book applications, every program that they put in the book is in that folder. So what I'm telling you is what you'll have are handouts, all of your homework, all of your labs, all of your slides. I'm going to put another folder in here that will be totally empty that will say HOTS. That's where your hands-on tests will go. Okay? And you will literally, when in your GitHub repository, you will have a thing in there that says HOTS. All right? Now, there will also be one more in here, one more folder that says written tests. That's the only reason that you don't have all of this right now. Do I have the written tests? Yes, I do. However, every written test has got the answer key, it's already in there. That wouldn't do a heck of a lot for you to take tests where you have the answer key right in there. Now, you might not mind that, all right? But I've got to go and strip that stuff off tonight. So once I've got that stripped off, all right, then it will, it will be available. And I will tomorrow make this folder available to each and every one of you. I don't know if what I just said made sense or didn't make sense, but hopefully it did. All right. So with all that said, let's come out here and take a look. Where is it? We're going to do two more things. So give me a second here. There. There we go. So we're going to do this a little bit later, which will be chapter 2 and 3. We'll take a look at this. And this, so that was homework. And we will look at these two sets of labs. All right. I plan on doing them with you. All right. But probably most of the homework assignments we'll probably end up doing as a class. But the labs will be assigned. But just so you can get into the swing of things, or however you want to look at that, all right, we'll do the first couple of them together. So you'll know the way that I expect you to do them, etc. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. So let's take a look. I'm going to open up both of these. I think they may be open already anyway. So let's see. Yeah, enable editing. That's the second one. I want the first one. I'm going to ask that you try to do this one yourselves, and then we'll go over it. All right, so the first thing it says in here, terms to review. Let's take a quick look at that stuff. The first one that's in there is syntax error. A syntax error is an error in the rules of the language. Probably the most often, when you will make a syntax error, you'll forget to put a semicolon at the end of a line. That's a syntax error. All right. You know, and I've given, you guys have probably heard this before, but imagine that I'm teaching, you know, 3rd grade English, and you're coming into class the first day of class. And, you know, it's right after summer, and I say, okay, class, for tomorrow, I want you to write a 1-page essay on what you did during your summer vacation. Okay? And you do that, and James here turns his in, and it's a whole page, and it's really well written, except he puts everything in one sentence. Probably the teacher isn't going to like that. All right? Because just like we have a syntax in the English language, programming languages have syntax as well. All right? If you are going to take something and make it a string in C#, we will be using string with a lowercase s. Guess what? You can use string with an uppercase s, but it means something else. All right? If you are going to make something an integer variable, you put int, meaning it's an int, a whole number. If I put int and I put a number after that, it's going to give me an error because it doesn't know what that means. So when you've got a syntax error, it's an error in the rules of the language. And again, I know that, I really and truly think you all get it. But maybe you noticed that before when I put this in and I left that off. I now get a thing down here that says semicolon expected. It's a syntax error. And if I double click, it brings me right there. Now, if I come in here and I create a new variable and I say int age equals 21, not a problem. It gives me that green there because I'm not using it. It's telling me I've got a variable that I've created that's not being used in the program. That's not an error. When you get stuff that's underlined with green squigglies, that means it's a warning. It's just letting you know this. All right. But if I'd have come in here and instead of int, and you can see it's blue, if I'd have put int1, now the system doesn't know what I'm trying to do. And it says the type or namespace name int1 could not be found. I am breaking the rules of the language. All right. I think it's about enough of that. So, bug. You guys have heard this story already, but supposedly it's the truth. One of the best known computer people in history is a woman who was a rear admiral in the Navy named Grace Hopper. All right, she died a few years ago. I think she was in her 90s. And to my knowledge, she was about 4.5 feet tall, but it was one of those people that even though she was small, nobody crossed her. All right. She was working on a program years ago, and that was back in the days when the computer she was using that basically was about the size of this room. All right. And she was working on it and it didn't work. That was back in the days when everything you wrote was in machine language. Zeros and ones that the computer basically, that's the only thing the computer understands. All right. And she looked at her code and it looked correct and she couldn't figure out what the problem was. That was back when computers had this big cathode ray tubes that were bigger than these. All right. So she thought maybe there was a tube that was bad. So they took it, they took the back of the machine off and everything looked good until they got to one area of it and there was literally a big dead moth inside of there. That was the, quote, first computer bug ever. They took it out and stuff worked. Ever since then, when you get an error in your code, it's known as a bug. When you are testing your program, the one you wrote, the idea is when you're testing it, you want to break it. You want to break it before you submit it to me, or if you're a professional programmer, before you submit it to the job. All right? So, identifier. An identifier is something you create. Literally, it's something you create. It could be the name of a variable. As we go on in here, and we get to about chapter 6 or 7, you will create your own methods or functions. And as we get to about chapter 12, you will create your own classes. But an identifier is something you create, and the name you give it to identify it is its identifier. As we go through this, there are certain rules you'll be expected to follow, because that's just the way people do it. For instance, if you create a variable that's called tax, it'll all be in lowercase. Okay? If you've got a variable called tax owed, you typically put it in like this. You run the two words together, and each new word gets capitalized. That's called camel case. All right? If you create a method, it's done the same way as a variable, but if you create a class, that's capitalized. Those are just unwritten rules that people are expected to follow when they're creating identifiers. All right? Now, if I come through here and I say string fn for first name equals Jeff, and then I just say int age equals 64. So I put that in there. All right? The 64 and the Jeff are what are referred to as literal strings. All right? Even though that's not a string, that's a literal value right there. That's a literal string, and that's a literal value. And again, the way that you read this is assign Jeff to fn, assign 64 to h. All right? An argument is not going to make a lot of sense right now, but when you are calling a routine, it's the information that routine may need in order to be able to do its thing. All right, so for instance, if I were to create a routine right here, just to show you what it's going to look like, and I typed in this, and don't worry if it doesn't make a lot of sense. Public int add 2 int and int and 1 int and 2. All right, and then I wrote in here return n1 plus n2. And then to call this function, I would do something like add 2 1137. All right, so what is that going to do? It's going to take 11, copy it, and put it in there. It's going to take 37, copy it, and put it in there. It's going to add 11 plus 37, and it's going to return 48 back to the program. That make a little bit of sense? All right. The reason I'm telling you this is these things in the parentheses, those are what are known as arguments. It's information you either have to pass to a routine or the routine needs in order to do its job. All right. All right. Line comments, you already saw this the other day. Single line comments start with 2 slashes. Block comments start with a /* and can be as many lines as you want them to be. It automatically will put the asterisk in there, and it ends with a //. So those are line comments and block comments. Source code is what you write in the program. All right. IDE, what Visual Studio is it's what's called an integrated development environment. It's kind of a one-stop shop. It allows you to create your programs. It allows you to save your programs. It allows you to compile your programs. It allows you to run your programs, and it shows you the output from your programs. It does it all. All right. It's kind of like a supercharged or a turbocharged editor, so to speak. All right. And then finally, menu bar. Well, you should know all that stuff already. That's what you see up on the top here. So if I'm working inside of Visual Studio, there's my menus. All right. There's some will call this the toolbar. Some will call that the menu bar. All right. So for chapter 1, we're going to take a break in just a minute. It says, please name your projects LB1, LB2, etc. Now, I don't really like that. This is Mr. Smith stuff. But what we're going to do when we come back is we're going to create this one. I'm going to ask you to try it. If you have any problems, that's not a problem. We'll take a look at how to do it as class. All right. But instead of naming it this, since this is for chapter 1 and this is the only one that's in there, that's it. We'll probably call this like CH01 lab. Does that make sense? All right. And we are supposed to create this. Well, how do you create this? This is a simple program that's supposed to simulate the way a wine glass would look, right? Well, if you look in here, how many lines do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Does that make sense to you? So this whole program will basically be 7 different console.writeLine statements. All right? So you'll make this one, come down and make this one, and there's different ways that you can do this, and I'll show you, at least one of them when I do mine. All right? But we're going to take a break until 5 after 9, and then when you come back, I'm not going to give you much time, like about 10 or 15 minutes to work on this. And even if you say, well, I didn't get it, then don't worry about it. Then just watch as we go through it as a class. It's not a problem. All right? So like I said, it is 8:55. Let's take a break. Come back at 9:05 and be prepared to write this. You'll take then to about 9:05 till 9:15, and then we'll go over it as a class.